me all excited and say, "Tonight Santa will come and bring you lots of toys, this time for real." But when I woke up the next morning and ran to our Christmas tree, I never found any presents. Then Mom would come into the room and say, "Oh no, did burglars break into our house again and steal all your presents? I'm so sorry." This repeated itself every year, and each time it made me cry. The world seemed so unfair to me. Only once I got older, I finally realized that my mom was too poor to afford Christmas presents. She had made up all those stories of us getting robbed on Christmas Eve, so I didn't figure out we were poor. But of course, I already knew that we were impoverished. I was living in a ghetto, and my ghetto school was so violent that teachers frequently got beat up by students, and kids like me who wore frayed shoes were made fun of all day. But then I got lucky. The best school in our city, which normally had a yearly tuition fee of $100,000, started a program to help underprivileged kids like me. I was somehow accepted into the program, and I thought I had won the lottery. For some reason, I believed that I could befriend the kids of powerful politicians and billionaires in my new school, and in return, they could secure me a good job after I graduated. But I was wrong, because these people don't want to be friends with you if you are not like them. Today, I wish I had never accepted the offer of going to this elite school, because while being poor is tough already, being poor while also being surrounded by a bunch of arrogant rich kids who keep reminding you how much better their life is than yours is even worse. Right on my first day, I learned that the school was separating their students into two groups. First, the rich and high-achieving kids who had inherited the good genes of their highly successful parents and now were groomed to take over their family businesses one day. Second, you had the typical rich kids who were irresponsible, arrogant, and drove to school in expensive cars. Each group was taught in different classrooms, and while I tried to join the high-achieving kids, the teachers made me take an IQ test first to see how gifted I was, and apparently I didn't make the cut. That's why I was put into the classes for lazy and low IQ students. Of course, I tried to make new friends anyway, and some girls were talking about horses, so I said, "Wow, you girls do horse riding?" The girls seemed uncomfortable talking to me, probably because I looked like a ghetto girl, but they were kind enough to invite me to go horse riding with them on the weekend. Only, when I arrived, they asked where my horse was. "I don't have a horse." "Well, you should have bought one." I wasn't sure if she was kidding or not, but I told them I'd just wait until they were finished. While watching them, I started chatting with a guy who turned out to be the personal assistant to the family of Anne, the girl that had suggested I should just buy a horse. He was the caretaker of her horse, and he told me a bit about Anne's rich life. He said her dad had thrown her a sweet 16 birthday party, with a fireworks so big that the fire department had to be on standby. And when Anne's dad found out the firemen didn't charge any money for showing up, he gifted them equipment worth $80,000, which included several heat-sensing goggles costing $10,000 each. It suddenly hit me how different my classmates' lives were from mine. My mom has never made more than minimum wage at her job, and most times she was unemployed anyway due to her depression. We were so poor that I often stole toilet paper from my school because we didn't have any at home. Anyway, after the horse riding was over, the girls and I sat down at a restaurant. I really wanted them to like me, so when they asked what my favorite country to visit was, I responded France, even though I'd never left the US. "Really? Me too. Last summer, my parents and I spent 2 weeks in the French Riviera. It's so much better than Italy." I continued, "Yeah, and the food is so good too." I thought things were going well, but then Anne said, "We have to talk about your outfit. It's hideous. You should come go shopping with us." Wow, she was inviting me to meet up again. Maybe she liked me, but it was hopeless. I didn't have the money for a new outfit, so I lied again, saying the way I dressed was just my style and I wouldn't change it. Anne didn't like that I had rejected her offer, so she said, "I guess you can't teach a pig how to fly," and they both giggled. I felt so embarrassed, but it got worse in school. When I greeted Anne in the hallway, she took me to the side and said, "Listen, I tried to include you in our group because my teacher asked me to, but you don't fit in. You dress like a hobo, and honestly, I want nothing to do with you." Ouch! She didn't understand that I would have loved to wear fancy clothes like her, but that I lacked the money to do so. After this incident, I stopped trying to make new friends. I became the quiet girl who didn't talk to anyone. During breaks, all I could do was listen in on my classmates gossiping. That's when I heard my classmate Matthew brag about his alleged relationship with our history teacher, Miss Colbert. He said, "My dad is giving me an allowance 10 times bigger than Mrs. Colbert's salary. She's dating me because I spoil her with tons of gifts. I even paid off her college debt." No one believed Matthew until he showed around photos of him and Miss Colbert kissing. I didn't see the photos myself, only the reaction of the other kids reacting to it. But in retrospect, it wasn't surprising at all. Matthew got bad grades in all subjects except in Mrs. Colbert's history class. Anyway, my teachers noticed that I didn't have any friends, so they often asked me why I wasn't trying more to fit in. I responded, fit into what? Driving $100,000 cars to school? No, sorry. I really tried to do that, but my parents are still poor. However, I also kept other kids at a distance, so they couldn't see that I was really just an uneducated girl from the ghetto. So, while I had always been an energetic and sociable kid at my old ghetto school, I had now become severely depressed. It took me some time to figure out why, but then it clicked. The reason was that I wasn't living an authentic life anymore. I had adopted the persona of a harmless girl, even though I was from the ghetto and had been through a lot of shit. Several times in my life, I've been jumped by crackheads who wanted to steal my food stamps and clothes. I have lived through winters without heating in my home, and I've seen the junkies near my house slowly switch away from drugs like crack and heroin and start using fentanyl instead. I got mad at myself for letting those spoiled brats at my school intimidate me so much. I knew I was tougher than all of them, so I swore myself to never be the quiet girl again. The next day in school, our teacher asked if someone wanted to apply to become school president. No one raised their hand except me. Then they all turned around and asked, "What do you promise to change in our school if you become president?" But with everyone's attention on me, I was too nervous to give a response. "Nothing. She will change nothing. That's different. She got my vote." I thought she was ridiculing me, but the other kids joined and chanted, "Make her president." Finally, I let loose and started laughing too. Maybe my classmates weren't that mean after all. Well, guess who the only other candidate to become president was? Matthew, the guy who was dating my history teacher and paying off her college debt. He was more popular than me and the favorite candidate. But I told you that I'm from the ghetto and you better don't mess with me. He often left his phone laying on his table, so I just stole it, and to figure out his PIN code, I requested access to the school security camera footage. I told them that someone had confused my school bag with theirs and accidentally walked away with it, and now I wanted to find out who had taken it. But really, I just zoomed in on Matthew while he unlocked his phone in the cafeteria. 1379. Easy. Then I went through his photos until I found the one where he was kissing Miss Colbert. Of course, teacher-student relationships are strictly prohibited. So I told him, either you step back from your candidacy to become school president, or Miss Colbert gets fired, and you will be in the news for using your dad's money to prostitute your own teacher. I wonder how your dad will feel about reading that news. He withdrew his candidacy immediately, and with only one contestant left, I automatically won the presidency. The teacher told me being school president will look great on my resume when I should apply to my first job one day. But honestly, I'm just glad to be a badass ghetto girl again. In my acceptance speech, I even roasted Anne. I told everyone how she'd expected me to just buy a horse so I could go horse riding with her. I made some other jokes about how disconnected my classmates were from ordinary people like me. And even though the other kids do respect me now, I would still prefer to be back in my old ghetto school.